Wow, major developments happening in France where it looks like some police officers have joined the yellow vest and the massive amounts of people hitting the streets right now protesting what they call medical tyranny and mandatory government-sanctioned shots. Wow, I wonder why we're not hearing about that in the mainstream media. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. This is Luke Rudowski of WeAreChange.org. A lot of very stunning, important developments happening from France, which we're going to be talking about in this video, as well as the latest schlubs of the mainstream media. Look at these two unhappy goofs literally talking about how they want to implement the French policies that are being protested right now in the United States. We're going to go over that, plus all the very troubling developments happening from this current administration. And we're going to get into that plus a lot more, but before we do, you should know that this independent media organization is sponsored and supported by you. And you can support us in many different ways. You could check out our online exclusive video content platform, LukeUncensored.com. We accept PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, cryptocurrencies, physical mail. We have great relationships with businesses that I personally use and love. And we just conducted an absolutely amazing survival event that we are getting extremely good reviews of. We will continue to do these events, and to find out all the latest in-person activities, trainings, and events, don't forget to sign up on our email list. The link is down below, or you could go to wearechange.org. And in the top right-hand corner, just put in your email, subscribe. Don't forget, if you are already subscribed, to check your spam box. That is absolutely critically important. Click not spam, because we have a lot of fun events planned for you in the not-so-distant future. Again, I never thought I would be a t-shirt vendor and survival self-defense training coach, but I am, so inadvertently, thank you, YouTube, for demonetizing this channel. Because I love what I do, and it's freaking awesome, and it wouldn't be possible if you didn't do that. Now, my source on the ground from Paris, France, which we called Bob in previous video coverages when we talked about the Yellow Vest, has been messaging me obsessively, talking about all the latest developments that are happening in Paris, France. Of course, with this latest video that he sent to me, video highlighting some police officers putting away their helmets and shields and marching with the protesters that are predominantly angry at Emmanuel Macron, a former Rothschild banker, the current president of France, who, according to many political analysts, has implemented some absolutely absurd policies, which we're going to be talking about in just a little bit. The response to these absurd policies, which these protesters call absolutely tyrannical, has been huge, and there's been a number of people coming out, not just in Paris, but from cities all throughout France. We're talking about tens of thousands of protesters, if not more, that are specifically trying to bring to attention the civil rights and liberties that are being taken away from them by government officials who are pretending to care about their health. We're going to explain that in just a little bit. But this past Saturday, scenes like this unfolded all throughout France, with hundreds of thousands of protesters taking to the streets, chanting no to Macron and no to him taking away people's rights to live freely. Now, of course, it wasn't all peaches and cream in France, as of course in some places there were clashes between protesters and police officers. It was predominantly peaceful, as CNN would call it, as you're seeing the scenes unfold here. But compared to other French protests, this was considered tame. In Toulouse, demonstrations like this were officially banned, but that didn't stop the group of protesters that hit the streets and were chanting no, no to the health pass. Yes, yes, we will disobey. And it wasn't just police officers and other civil service members partaking in these protests. It was also firefighters, which are seen in these videos walking down police officers. And what is bringing hundreds of thousands of people to the streets of France, along with firefighters and some police officers? Well, the announcement by French President Emmanuel Macron that life as normal is over and that you will need government permission in order to go to a bar, restaurant, a shopping mall, or to simply conduct life normally. As the French president announced a health pass that mandates you take a medical procedure that he wants you to take, or else you will go to jail for 6 months if you enter a bar and restaurant without the government's permission. The owner of the bar and restaurant is going to go and face a year in jail with a 45,000 euro fine. Massive restrictions, massive lockdowns on average day human activity that is meant to bend the will of the people to acquiesce and submit to the government and to do whatever the government wants them to do in that moment. The policies that were implemented by the French president were not democratically implemented. They are officially decrees, but when we look at them, we're talking about the banning of using public transport, entering cinemas, shopping malls, bars, cafes, restaurants. This decree by Macron goes into effect on August 1st. There was no debate. There was no voting on this. The people didn't have their say here. And in my opinion, this is absolutely insane. What's the Western's mainstream media response to this? Well, by and large, they're ignoring a lot of the bigger details here. A lot of them are ignoring the protest here. But France 24 decided to run with the headline saying that you're a crazy conspiracy theorist if you are not for this utterly insane big government control of your existence. Yes, they ran the title that conspiracy theories are fueling the, quote, French opposition to this health pass. And just when you thought media coverage couldn't become more ridiculous, here we have this latest propaganda PR piece for the ruling establishment by France 24 that is trying to negate any legitimate privacy, security, and freedom concerns that the people of France have with this absolute huge power grab that the government is trying to take right in front of them. And they're doing this with essentially the mainstream media working as their PR representatives, and that's exactly what they are. And again, there's so many things I wanted to bring up here, whether it's natural immunity in the new Israeli study, whether it's the fact that the cases are spiking and surging in places where people have done this medical procedure that Macron wants everyone to do, and places that haven't done this medical procedure aren't surging with new cases from supposedly this new variant. And again, I'm already saying too much. I'm going to say a lot more specifically on tomorrow's video for LukeUncensored.com. But here in the United States, we still have some semblance of democratic institutions, as perfectly represented by the state of Florida, which the U.S. Court of Appeals has backed on their decision not to enforce publicly or privately any medical passports. Counter to that, in California, we have the state announcing new lockdowns, new restrictions, new mask mandates, as the state that had the most compliance when it came to people taking a medical procedure is showing the highest amount of, quote, increases in cases. How's that happening? Why that's happening? Again, I'm not a medical professional, but I will be talking about it on LukeUncensored.com. Now, the Biden administration that wants to institute similar policies like they have in California to the rest of the United States is also announcing and declaring some absolutely ridiculous statements, like the President of the United States that now is claiming that Facebook is, quote, killing people because people are able to talk to each other. Specifically, talking to each other about a medical procedure that he wants them to take, with Biden directly saying Facebook is killing people. Facebook, of course, is refuting that claim. That's an absurd claim. You might as well blame forks on making people fat. But this goes along with the hyperbolic, sensational, emotional language coming from the White House recently that has been ratcheting up and has even doubled down on this statement, saying that, yes, Facebook is killing people with, quote, misinformation. This is after the White House announced that they are working with Facebook, taking down and censoring any post that the government doesn't like. They brazenly admitted to doing this, as also the Biden administration with the DNC has released plans to, quote, fact check and censor private text messages. They also announced that people should be banned from all social media if they're banned from one of them. They're talking about door-to-door inspections as their language becomes more hyperbolic as they keep invoking and talking about civil war. Dr. Fauci is also, of course, doubling down with more hyperbolic, sensational, emotional language himself, saying recently that because of, quote, false information, people are in fact dying, and that, quote, the United States would still have polio and smallpox if people had social media. An absolutely absurd, irrational thought that he should be embarrassed for sharing, but later on he went on CNN and with one of their lead anchors espoused how what France is doing is great and how the United States needs to do what France just instituted. And of course, there's a massive backlash against. Now, let's be honest here. The government has never cared and will never care about your personal health. So obviously, we know something else is up here, because if they did care about your health, they would address the soaring violence that is happening in major American cities all throughout this country, with horror stories of absolute astronomical abuse going up against women, minority populations, and of course random civilians that are targeted more and more from government policies that are incentivizing more crime to happen. If the government really cared about your health or the general well-being of its population, they would actually hold the whole gang of individuals behind Jeffrey Epstein that for over 30 years allowed this man to hurt thousands of children in unspeakable ways. 30 years! The federal government, judges, prosecutors, local cops, celebrities, tech Silicon Valley politicians, all were watching, all knew that children were being hurt. And again, we can't even say it here. We're not going to say it here. They all knew. The system, the mainstream media, they all knew. And they decided that either they were going to look the other way or participate it and help it. Those same government officials, those same establishment institutions now want you to give away all of your rights because they care about your health. Yeah, right. Now, I already made the blame the fork on making people fat. And now I already said that twice in the last month. I need a new analogy. What's a new analogy that I should be using? Let me know down in the comment section below. I always appreciate your constructive criticism. I always appreciate your input. I always appreciate the creative endeavors that are manifested in the comment section, because you do that. Because you guys literally double-click the video. Just double-click it. Randomly share it to random people. Because you do that, I'm still here, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. This is why. I love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on wearechange.org.